Hey guys, ciao, hi, hey guys, it's your boy M.K.S here with another video. I haven't got Juventus top, cap, so I've got Juventus cap top, but I don't think it's an official one. But I'm wearing this AC Milan cap because I don't have the Juventus one. But as a fan of Italian football generally, I'm a fan of Italian football. I thought I'd wear this one. Some things never change, I guess. But talking of which, because it's the 11th today, I thought I'd talk about. And it's January, I thought I'd talk about focus on Juventus and a new Juventus. Think of the name, because the number 11 makes me think of like walking, and it also makes me think of change. I know it could be like walking for change as well, like fundraising, charity, and things like that. But some things they never change. And on that note, I'm trying to focus on thinking of 40 ideas as I normally do. I've been trying to avoid distractions as usual. I'm in a much better mental place, I think, than I was going through an existential crisis. So I'm feeling a lot better, or just trying to be more positive anyway, even though I still sometimes go through an existential crisis or whatever, or can be pessimist, but I suppose I'm putting the effort in to try and be as positive and upbeat as possible. So I'm still wrong for some reason. Don't know if you can hear that in the background. But anyway, as I say, because it's the 11th, I think of like change and all that kind of thing. But I suppose Italians could walk more and play. I wouldn't say walk because I wouldn't say work because I'm not a big fan of that word. But on a serious note, could walk more and have a better diet and things like that. But I'm trying to focus on like what Juventus can do to change, to improve. I would have done that on the first, but I was trying to focus on like my plans for the rest of the year. And ideally, I probably would have done my plans for the year ahead on New Year's Eve, and then my plans for Juventus and a new Juventus on the first. But I thought the 11th would be quite fitting. But anyway, I'll try not to waffle. I know I'm waffling too much already. But here goes. These, as usual, are pointers number 1 to 10. So here goes. So number 1, a lot of Juventus fans will probably, or most Juventus fans, I'd love to do an opinion poll from Juventus fans. I hope they won't be too harsh. I love for Juventus, and in fact Italian football fans, or even football fans generally, to get involved in the comments, or everyone's welcome to get involved in the comments, even if you want to say negative things if you want, or hate mail or whatever if you want to, although I'd rather be positive. I don't say that one. But I lost my train of thought. I suddenly got it back. As a fan of Italian football, and the fact that Juventus' nickname is youth, and they've won quite a lot of unfortunately not Champions Leagues, but a lot of Serie A titles. I think, what if Juventus focused on improving the youth infrastructure for Italian football? And I suppose because I want Roma and like Milan, and especially Roma, to have more funds, to have more world-class players. I'd love to see more investment into Italian football more generally, which I might come to in more detail. But because I love for Milan and especially Roma to have more world-class players and that kind of thing, in a way, possibly if my dream came true, it'd probably be, or in this case, one of my many dreams, it would probably be Juventus to have great youth academies, in the plural, but to be a feeder club for both the national team and for Milan, but especially for Roma, perhaps even more so. So to produce many great players for the national team. Again, I'm sure many Juventus fans, and I know Italian football is very competitive, I'm sure they would disagree with me, but many Juventus fans would probably rather see league titles being won and like Champions Leagues and all that. I thought in the past, like, and to an extent I still do, like, for Juventus to be known as a world-class team, not just a good team in Italy, they would have to get back not just to winning Serie A titles, but even more so, like, prioritising on Champions League. But now I'm more into sort of seeing Juventus produce great players, young players, which they can be proud of, and saying that we produce the best players for the national team, which would for me would be better as a fan of Italian football more generally. Again, given the name youth, than seeing them winning like Serie A's or even Champions Leagues or whatever. Although I'd love to see Italian teams like Milan and Roma winning in Europe, or Italian teams generally, especially Milan and Roma winning like Champions Leagues and things like that. But I'm going to move on to point number 2. Again, I love to do opinion polls for Juventus fans, and I love for people to find out more about Juventus and its history and that kind of thing. for those who don't know, I don't know if people are not into football watch these videos, but these specific videos where I talk about football, which I'm mainly focusing on for January. But I know I like to cover different topics at different times, but football obviously is one I cover quite a lot. But Juventus play in black and white. I think that's because Notts, they borrowed a kit from Notts County. But yeah, I'd love for people to find out facts and figures and information about Juventus and Italian football generally. But also, I often talk about, like, in point number 2, I think of like what Italian teams like Milan, Roma, Juventus, and others could learn, and also the national team could learn from other countries. And in Juventus' case, I'd love for them to have their own version of, like, Clairefontaine, the French academy, which produces many great players. I think it's called Clairefontaine, and then their own version of the Ajax academy, Ajax youth system, and especially like Barcelona, which has produced so many great players. I'd love to see like the next Messi, Ronaldo, the two Monis, the Brazilian and Portuguese version, the next Pelés, Kantés, Henrys, and God knows who, being produced in Italy, in the next George Bests and that kind of. I'd love for there to be specific academies, which I mentioned yesterday, on, like, I might mention a few times this month, but where they, and in the future as well, where they, all being well, where they try different skills, like they try skills done by Pelé, Messi, Maradona, Ronaldo, the other Ronaldo, both Ronaldos, the Brazilian one and the Portuguese one, R9, and that kind of thing, and don't be afraid to make mistakes, especially midfielders and strikers, not so much, or not goalkeepers or defenders, but just midfielders and strikers. Try those skills out, and also there's some, like, there could be some for, like, producing the next Buffon, Casillas, and next great goalkeepers being produced in Italy. So I love for Italy to learn a lot from, like, Spain, what they've done, and even France with their migration system and that kind of thing, including those, which I hope to come to in more details. But also in terms of Juventus, one thing I was thinking about is, like, finding out their mistakes that they did in the past, like the Calciopoli scandal. Another thing for people to perhaps find out about the negative side of Italian football, unfortunately, and other things they've been involved in where they've made mistakes, like they fall from grace, as I would put it. So I'd love for them to learn from their own history and mistakes to avoid, as well as other clubs and national teams and sports generally, and business and all sorts of different areas, life itself generally and whatnot, to learn mistakes to avoid. And I'd love for them to work with FIFA and UEFA to actually go from being involved, unfortunately, in the Calciopoli scandal, where supposedly they paid for favourable referees, and to actually have a Juventus for Justice, J for J, Juventus for Justice, sort of thing. So it's pronounced Juventus, but it's with a J, and it means youth in English, apparently. But to see, as I said before, I don't know much Italian. I just support Italy because I think I look Italian, rightly or wrongly, and I support them since I was young, so I've sort of stuck by them. There's a nice Italian top underneath this, but I'm going to say I hope the lighting's good enough. I've only got one lamp that put it on at the moment, but it's dark already. It's already got dark by like 2 o'clock, and it's almost 4 o'clock. But it's almost 4:45 or whatever. But sorry, getting back to the point, trying to get to the point. I would love for, as a Juventus, to have, like, their own justice. I was going to say justice system, their own justice group, which talks about, actually, it would be quite an irony, I think, Juventus to work with FIFA, who have also been in trouble and accused of corruption and that kind of thing, but to work with FIFA and UEFA to improve the image of the beautiful game, which I love for Italian teams and Celtic to do generally. At some point I wanted to mention about our rival, the Celtic rivals, but I might talk about that a bit later. But yeah, I'd love to see how they could learn from that and, like, talk about tackling injustices, tackling match fixing and corruption, making sure the best team wins and that kind of thing. So I'd love for Italy, and especially Juventus, I think it'd be quite fitting to have that sort of anti-corruption and anti-crime, anti-criminality, tackling and booting out match fixing and corruption generally, making sure the best team wins, hopefully. I don't know how they do it, but I think it'd be cool if they could look into working on that and getting young people involved in football to get them out of crime and things like that. So I think it'd be quite fitting. It'd be a fitting irony, but kind of cool, I think, if Juventus went against, like, match fixing, corruption and injustices and that kind of thing generally, so worked on justice, again, the best team winning, or best teams winning. And sometimes there might be a bit of luck involved, but making sure it's not because of it's not because of money exchanged or whatever. Like, if Italian teams, Antwerp or Celtic, won because of a bit of luck, or even mistake by the referees, as long as it's an honest mistake and not one that's deliberate or whatever, then I'd be okay with that. I'd be happy with that even. But yeah, making sure that there's no match fixing, corruption, or anything like that. And moving on, number 3, I know I went into that into quite a lot of detail, but I'd say for me personally, I'd love to see Juventus provide so many great players for the national team and become a feeder club for the national team, for AC Milan, and also for the national team, and especially for Roma as well, probably just as much, or almost as much, maybe the national team the most, followed by Roma and Milan. Like, so producing great players and then Roma having the funds to buy those players, but they could be proud, even if they don't win that many trophies, let's say for Juventus, to they could be proud of winning, helping the Italian national team and say, we've contributed the most to the Italian national team. So hopefully that'll be something to be proud of in the future, which I'm going to cover, hopefully, if I remember, in point number 27 in a bit more detail in that regard. But yeah, hopefully they'll be proud of that. That would be one of my biggest dreams, I guess, in football at least, and if not in life, because I take my football very seriously. But I love for sponsors to provide opportunities for people in Turin and all over, not Turin where Juventus is based, and all over Italy, to play as much football as possible. Number 4, on that note, I say places and spaces for sport. And another point I mentioned quite recently a few times, I know, I repeat myself, some things never change, as I say, and I talk about change, but is for Italian football and Celtic, if I'm honest, and I'm maybe trying to focus on Italian football this month at least. But I would love for, I'm going to cover Celtic a little bit, but mostly Italian football today and for the rest of this month. But I love Celtic almost as much, but anyway. Yeah, for Italian football and Celtic, maybe even to work together with FIFA and UEFA to tackle corruption and improve the image of the beautiful game, and do a lot for charity and things like that, try and tackle poverty, at least absolute poverty, and make sure that like we can try and work towards helping everyone to have a house, shelter, enough to drink, enough food to eat, excuse me, and things like that. So to try and make the world a better place. And I think of like Juventus standing for diversity, because like I think of this is a bit of a controversial one. I hope this doesn't come across wrong, but like Juventus, but also they can work with the Jewish community, Jewish people and the Jewish community, and Arabic people. And I have a bit of a dilemma with that because in the past I wanted Qatar and Dubai to invest in Juventus, but maybe they could help to fund football academies. But I'd love for them to invest in Roma instead now, as a fan of Italian football generally, because I'd love for them to turn Roma to become, in better English, honestly as no, to become the Giallorossi Galacticos, the new Real Madrid. But yeah, I love for it, I almost forgot to say my point, sorry, for Italian football and Celtic to work with FIFA and UEFA and say like peace through football, one I talked about recently, so to discourage investment in the weapons industry, the arms trade, weapons industry and that kind of thing, and wars and the military industrial complex and that kind of thing. Donald Trump might not prove, funny enough, he met the Juventus team and said, well, the controversial comment about women in sports or whatever, apparently, but anyway. No, I say apparently, I saw the clip, but anyway, I won't get too much into that right now. But yeah, tackling wars and saying like instead of investing in wars and the weapons trade, the military industrial complex and all that kind of, they could invest in football. And as a fan of Italian football and Celtic, I prefer it to be invested in there into Italian football and of course Celtic and sponsoring that kind of thing. But again, I'd love for them to work with Jewish individuals and the Jewish community as well as Arabic people, Muslims, Christians, Jewish people, Buddhists, and people of all different faiths and backgrounds, as it's black and white, and also I think like Juventus. But in the past, I thought it'd be quite symbolic if they worked with like Jewish individuals and businesses, but also with Arabians to sort of see that they could put that symbolically, like put that difference aside, if that makes sense. But again, I love for Qatar, Dubai, and Arabs generally to invest in like in Roma, but also I'd love for them to sponsor like football pitches for Juventus and with the town team generally, just like with Celtic. I'd say I'd love for there to be like please match, I'll say it politely, but please match the giving that they give to they would say please match the giving that we give to charity. So for instance, if Juventus win, or throughout their history they've won like 100 million in prize money or whatever, and they can give like 10% of their equity away, then sponsors could come and match what they've given away to charity. So whatever they give away to charity would be great for like Qatar, Dubai, and others to give back. And I'd love to give them that funding. And if they could do that with Roma and with Milan, Roma, and Juventus. In Juventus' case, I'd love for that specifically to go to youth development. But I'm going to move on to point number 5. Some of my habits never change, I'd say. But I'd say my goals for Juventus and one of my biggest dreams would be to see them focusing on youth development and producing the next Pirlo, who played for Juventus, the next Platini, who also played for Juventus, Zidane, and players like that, but also like Ronaldinho, Ronaldo, the Brazilian one at R9, the Portuguese one, and many other great players, Kaká, and players like that. So producing those world-class players, Pele and people like that, Kante, Henry, players like that. I know Henry played for Juventus for a while, but he did much better at Arsenal. But again, learning the mistakes, playing players in position and things like that. I mean, it might mean they won't win as many trophies, especially if like Roma, Milan, and especially Roma had the money to buy their best players, I guess. But they could be proud to be a feeder club for the national team. Many Juventus fans might not agree with me, but those are my personal goals and dreams and opinions and whatnot. Number 6, again, hope that'll benefit the national team exponentially, and they'll have loads of spaces and places for playing and practicing their soccer. Spaces for playing and practicing football, however you want to put it. Number 7, talking about Celtic, and again, I'm mainly trying to focus on Italian. I mentioned Celtic a few times. I wasn't going to mention them except for point number 7, because number 7 reminds me of Celtic. I know I mentioned their rivals, one of Juventus' rivals, Torino, and even Inter Milan. As a fan of Italian football more generally, I would love for Italian teams to have a partnership with Celtic, including rival Italian teams, and for Italian teams to root for each other when they're playing non-Italian teams generally, to see Italian teams do better in Europe, to represent Italy in league tables and things like that, or in the league table, winning like most European trophies and that kind of thing at club level. So I look for Italian teams like Milan and Roma, to be honest, to overtake La Liga, or Serie A to overtake La Liga, basically. But yeah, Celtic, a good victory yesterday. I love for Juventus and Celtic to have a partnership together, and work together and share ideas and learn from each other. And again, especially to play at youth level, which we most out for this video, but for these videos. But yeah, I'll try not to mention Celtic too much, because I'm thinking of Italian, but normally when I think of one, I think of the other. But I'd love for them to have loads of 7-a-side pitches where they play and practice together. But yeah, good victory for Celtic yesterday, winning 4-0. I was thinking, what can make it a beautiful Sunday? There's that song. Hey, 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 it's a beautiful Sunday. When you say that you love me. Normally, Celtic fans play that when we beat them, our rivals, or in the league or whatever. Especially if we won the league on a Sunday, that'd be cool. Or when top of the table again. But yeah, Aberdeen and Dundee could do us a favour today if they beat Rangers, the Rankers, as I call them, and Hearts, respectively, breaking Hearts. That'd be great. But yeah, there's something else I was going to say about Celtic, and I completely forgot. But yeah, I love for them to practice, especially at youth level, and to learn from each other and that kind of thing. And again, for sponsors to match what Juventus and Italian team generally, and also Celtic, give away to charity. It's really annoying. I was going to say something about Celtic, but I completely forgot. One of the things I think, maybe it was this, I was going to say, is like Juventus got in trouble for the Calciopoli scandal, which for me, as an Italian football fan, is really disappointing and heartbreaking, I guess, for me personally. And I'm sure for many Juventus fans and fans of Italian football who want to see Serie A teams do well. And I think it really killed Italian football for a long time. Hopefully it will make an emergence, come back from the dead or whatever. But I think it'd be funny if the Rankers, as I call them again, Rangers, the Rankers got in trouble for like match fixing or bribing referees or having referees in their favour or whatever, decisions in their favour, and they got fines or even points deductions or whatever, or even demoted perhaps. I think that'd be quite funny. That'd be a much more cheery version of like Scotland's own version of the Calciopoli scandal, that would be called. the Scottish soccer scandal. I guess if you use alliterations, or Scottish football scandal or whatever. Yeah, also I'd love for like Hearts, come to think of it, to have like Tony Bloom, top investor. I think there was some allegation against him, like being involved in untoward sort of match gambling or something. So I think it'd be cool if they got point deductions and Shakur got a massive fine or something like that. It set them back much further. But I think with Celtic, maybe they have to focus on themselves, talking about Celtic, and like buy a decent goalkeeper and 2 decent strikers. If I was a billionaire, I would help them to do that. But moving on, number 8, as I say, Juventus and Italian teams generally, and Celtic to have a great partnership. And I know they could be rivals. Juventus are going to be rivals with obviously Torino and Inter Milan, as they call it, derby, the Italian derby of Italy, just like with Liverpool and United or whatever. But I'd love it somehow like even rivals like AC Milan and Inter Milan, obviously they're rivals of each other, and Inter Milan and Juventus and Torino and Juventus and whatnot, if they rooted for each other when they played non-Italian teams, and when they play each other, obviously they can still be enemies. But that's my opinion. That's one thing I'd love to see. Also, as I say, I'd love to see Juventus as it's black and white. I think I might forgot to mention that point as well. Like I think of like Juventus being pro-Jewish or anti-Semitic, against anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitic. And also saying that we support people whether they're Muslim, Christian, Jewish, or any other background. So basically supporting diversity and working with FIFA and UEFA. Again, right in the image of the beautiful game, and hopefully get more funding in doing so, which I hope will benefit, as I say, in Juventus' case, I'd love for them to invest in youth development and be proud to provide great players and say we help the Italian team to do better and hopefully go on to win World Cups. If Juventus can help Italy, and the Italian team generally, but especially Juventus helping Italy to win those World Cups, and given that their nickname is like, or the name in English, when you translate it to English, is youth, I think it would be most fitting if Juventus did that even more than any other Italian team. Although again, I'd love for all Italian teams, Milan, Roma, Torino, Inter, and all the other Italian teams to do that as well, but especially Juventus. And number 9, as I say, that would be one of my top priorities. But I'd love to know from Juventus fans specifically, like, what would be your dreams and priorities? So I hope Juventus fans in the future will be able to answer that. Hopefully without being too harsh, they might say. You're a bit of an idiot, they might say to me, I don't know. But hopefully they'll find the video a bit interesting. But yeah, I've got to be more dramatic. I know I do have a monotone voice or whatever, unfortunately. But it is what it is, I guess. But yeah, my priority would be to see Juventus providing great players for the youth. And number 10, on that note, I'll say, hope they provide great players for the youth. And I think making mistakes and learning from them is really important. I think like when teachers or when parents, teachers, or even bosses or whoever put people down, and in this case like football managers, I think it stops them from trying to take on a step. So like if they try a step over or they try a trick, try a skill, and the manager has a go at them and says, don't try that, then they're going to be put off from trying again. But if the manager says, okay, you tried that and it didn't work, you can become a field of, instead of a one-trick pony, a field of trick ponies. Trick of field ponies, something like that. But on a serious note, like they could be given chances to make mistakes and learn from them. And again, I love for them to have different pitches and academies. I think like where I live, we have something called Goals, which has like 5 or 6 or 7 side pitches and things like that. So if they have things like that, but each in Goals they have like it says Maradona Stadium, or it says San Siro or whatever, so different pitches. But in this case, it could say the Messi, or the Messi Stadium or whatever, and people try different tricks by Messi, or try those skills and see if it works or whatever, and keep practicing until they get it right. Especially from a young age, from like 5, 6, 7 years old or whatever, 8 years old, 9, 10, like that, to keep playing football and practicing each day, and like just trying those skills and learning from their mistakes, being told it's okay to make mistakes and that kind of thing. Anyway, I'm going to go for a walk and then I'll probably try and do part 2 and then maybe go for a nap. Nice life story now. But anyway, peace and love. Sorry if I didn't get to the point as quickly.